welcome everyone. Good evening to PitchCamp, a webinar series on sales for entrepreneurs. This is our 8th webinar today. I'm just very deeply humbled on the progress, the journey that we have made over the last 8 weeks now. Thanks to all the amazing speakers in the past, and thanks to today's speaker as well. So today we have Harshit Agarwal, who is the CEO of AppKnox, and we're going to be talking about what every technology startup dreams is. How do we acquire sustainable customers, and how do we do it, right? And many of us, as we are building products and trying to take our early versions of our product out to the market, we would want to close sales and try to become a sustainable company. So that's essentially what we are going to be talking with Harshit today on their journey of building AppKnox. They've been around for some time now. I'm very excited to bring Harshit on the PitchCamp platform today. So before we jump in, I just want to take a minute to talk about PitchCamp. I'm Bimlesh Gundarao, and PitchCamp is an initiative that we are looking to help entrepreneurs and sales teams share their ideas better with the world. So the whole idea is to offer coaching and interventions for entrepreneurs and sales teams to further improve their pitch decks and their sales processes from a B2B sales point of view. So without further delay, Harshit, thank you so much for taking time and being on PitchCamp.
Thanks a lot, Bimlesh. Welcome everybody, and I'm looking forward to a session where probably you guys also learn something, and I at the end also learn from you guys. So I'll give you a brief intro of what we are and about myself. So I have 8 years experience of running startup, and since last 6 years we are running AppKnox, and we are a mobile app security company where we deal into securing mobile applications for enterprises, and we started way back in 2014. And we raised funding way early in our journey, and post that in a year or two we kind of bootstrapped, and currently we are almost at $1 million revenue and growing substantially. So that's briefly about AppKnox. We are a very lean team, 17 member team, based out of India, Bangalore, and serving enterprises across the globe.
Fantastic. So talk to us a little bit, Harshit, about what got you guys started to start a company around the security area. What's your background on that space? How did you how did your co-founders come together? Talk to us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Sure. So before AppKnox, I was part of another startup where we were building platform for end customers and all. And Shubho, who is the other co-founder, came from security background, and I am basically a technical guy, so I used to build product back then. And Shubho was into cybersecurity and all, and he used to do hacking, and he was working at TCS, and we both were we are friends from college, so both used to stay together in Bangalore. And while our normal discussion, we realized that we could do really something big with respect to security, and security was catching up back then. There was not too much of competition, and definitely it was not too much spoken about things in India especially. And we knew that going forward it will be a major thing in demand, and mobile applications were growing. People were talking about only mobile, or even I think Myntra, Flipkart came up with only mobile around 2014-15. So
Right.
Things were too much focused towards mobile, and we thought we'll be very focused towards mobile security, and that's when we both jumped into it. So I left my company and Shubho left his company, and we both started working towards it. And the third co-founder, Prateek, is also from a college, but he is a senior. And eventually we had a requirement of marketing, which we'll probably jump on in more discussion as we proceed in our topics further.
So now you guys have got together and you started looking at mobile as a big opportunity. Companies were, I think I remember at this time, Flipkart was the first one that said that we'll move our entire operation and our entire e-commerce as a mobile first company. That was Sachin Bansal's big bold bet at that point of time. So Talk to us about your first couple of iterations and your journey to product market fit, and acquiring your first set of customers, and the challenges and the wins that you had during that time.
Yep. So one of the major challenge that me and Shubho had in initial days was both of us were from technical background, and both of us didn't knew how to sell, and that was, I think, that hiccup was pretty long for us. It took us almost 1.5 years to really understand on how exactly to go to customer and speak for selling. And whenever we used to think for planning, we used to always assume that companies will come and buy us, but that's not how it works. So you have to have a value prop which they look at and they say that, okay, this is something that looks very, very good or niche to me, and I should go ahead and use them. And I think within a year we realized that it will not work this way, and we have to have proper pitch and everything in place, and a plan on how exactly to interact with customers to help them understand why they need security. And initially, I think we even realized that when we go to any Indian company and talk about security, they generally say that, okay, it should be part of developers' normal development lifecycle. But that was not the case, and it took us a really long time to convince them that, okay, that's not the case. And initially, to acquire few early customers, and we had good logos in initial first year. So I think we started working with Freecharge, Paytm. Then we had found issues in Ola as well, but our general approach was we used to go to these customers and say that, okay, we'll use our platform and try to find security issues in the app. And if you think that is valuable, then we'll work together. And we were able to convince, after that 3 to 4 months of this whole POC discussion, convincing them that, okay, we'll do a free POC. And then they used to see value, and then we used to say that, okay, let's go ahead and start working together. Then the second challenge arose where we didn't knew how to really put it in contract or how to really work. So we started with, okay, over the year you would require 5 scans. So we'll just give you a bucket of 5 scans. And that's what we sold to Paytm. That was our first paying customer. And I think we were very happy that we were able to sell them this way. And they were fine with paying us way in advance. But I think over the period we realized that was not right approach. But yeah, so these were some of the few early customers. We also did was, while finding security issues, if we never used to get a fair response from our prospects, we generally used to help them more by giving them certain time and all. And one of the things that really worked in our favor back then was the Ola hack. So we had found security issue, we reached out to them, we gave them 45 days, they did not fix the issue. And then we released it publicly. And it was picked by every other media house. And that led us to almost 35-40 accounts, all SMBs and startups again, within a month period of time. And that was really inspirational for us. Like, we were very happy, we were overwhelmed. And at the backside, we were not prepared to take so much of load. And a lot of bigger logos churned out because we were not delivering them on proper timeline and all that we should have been. We had overpromised, and had its own repercussion. But yeah, I think that was one of the overwhelming thing that worked for us in early days.
Fantastic. So that came out like a great growth hack. Right?
Yeah, that was a very good growth hack.
Fantastic. So your initial target was very nicely segmented, either naturally or it coincidentally happened that predominantly the new age startups were the primary builders of the mobile app ecosystem. Yeah. Right? And so what was your approach in reaching out to them, especially the Paytms, the Freecharges, and all these things?
So ideally, we used to get a list from very basic strategy. We used to look at Your Story and all of these media houses and just look for companies that have raised Series A, Series B, and started reaching out to them. So that was our first level of screening, that, okay, these are the companies that we'll be reaching out to. And post that, our target was, again, over there, they are not very a big team. They used to be ideally between 25 to 30 or 50 members, and were growing after that. So security was something that was in somewhere in their mind. So we used to reach out to CTO and say that, okay, probably you're growing, congratulations on your funding. And the next big thing would be probably if someone hacks you and there's a news out, then there will be a sudden fall. And that is something that will not work. So we always used to ride on the fear a bit while selling. And that worked for us in that particular segment, where we used to go ahead and say that, okay, if you don't secure it, you will be probably uh, like in news and all. And then we used to give reference of Paytm and Freecharge and all that, the very few customers that we were working with, and they were convinced that, okay, let's give it a shot. And again, the whole pricing was that we used to say that, okay, purchase 7 or 8 license and over use it as long as you can. And we were able to convince and close a lot of companies in food tech like Tiny Owl and all. I remember.
Right.
So almost every company that was raising Series A or B, we used to somehow get entry in that and start working with them. And yeah.
Fantastic. So by this stage, your initial customers, started using your product, using your services, and also, with your current value proposition and business model, on the licensing based. So, at what point of time, did you look to pivot this into a SaaS model?
Yeah. So I think this was around 2015, mid to December-ish, when we were having this decent rise, and we were like adding almost 10 to 12 logos every month. And around 2016 mid, we realized that our overall revenue is not growing. And the major challenge was that our team was reaching out to these kind of companies on regular basis. And deal sizes were around $1,000, $2,000, where they used to say that, okay, we'll buy 4 to 5 license and use it over time. And there was no time limit as well to that. And that led to a lot of companies that are in our contract, but overall revenue is not increasing. It's consistent. And we had raised funding around 2015. So there was investor pressure on showing some result. So we started calculating revenue and we realized that we are still roughly around $7,000 to $8,000 of MRR, and it's not really increasing. And when we dig deeper on why exactly that's happening, why we are still doing 7,000 to 8,000 monthly revenue, we realized that there was something really wrong in our business model, and we cannot keep on selling a bucket of scans and just leave it open, which they can use any time as they want without any timeline and all. So we revamped it into subscription based model. We told that, okay, you use it for a month, you pay us lesser amount than whatever you would pay otherwise, but use our platform as many numbers of times as you want, and start getting more value out of it. And we were able to convince few of our customers back then. I remember some of them, like Paytm did not got convinced, they were still fine with pay per scan, but Tiny Owl was one of the customers. Then there were few other food tech, I'm not able to recall the name, but yeah, they said that, okay, we'll go ahead with that. Freecharge got convinced that, okay, they'll go ahead with subscription based model with an annual contract. So that did work in our favor over long run. But I think that was sweet spot where we were making a consistent $7,000 to $8,000 monthly revenue, while our expenses were upwards of $20,000 to $25,000, and we were not able to grow it for 8 to 12 months timeline. And the reason was all of these customers used to come and sit over there, and we didn't had any timeline on when it would renew or give us more revenue. And like there used to be a lot of churn as well, but yeah, I think that was fine because we were adding decent number of logos on the top of the funnel.
Okay. So with this pivot now, the customers had the opportunity to do unlimited scans as against a paper scan model.
Yeah.
So how much of your business model impacted your product architecture and the way your product was managed to handle this new change?
Yeah. So I think the initial journey, we were building our product, so there was not too much focus on product. And since they would just use once in a while, they also didn't had strong resemblance that, okay, we are really using a product. And we sold it as a service, like 5 scans and all.
Right.
As a commodity, I would say. But when we were going ahead and selling them subscription, that okay, you will buy at $599 for a year or for a month, sorry. So they would see a regular value on monthly basis, and we had to track that. Okay, are they using or not? If they're not using, then go back and check with them. And we initially lacked a lot of those things. So initially I don't think we ever tracked what in 2015-16 we never tracked on what is the usage, and over time we used to see that okay, they've churned, and then we used to go back and see how many scans have they done in last 1 year, and there was like 2 or 3 scans they've done, and we used to feel that okay, we were not able to give proper value, and that's when we went back and started discussing on features where we could have more and more like in depth, or we are aligned in their normal development life cycle and all. So I think it took us really long time to really become that tool that sits in their DevOps and all. So currently we have the integration with like DevOps, we have SDLC integration, we have all of those things. So it took us really long time. I think this was a problem that we were able to solve almost last year, and there were a lot of features we had to introduce for that, and it's still in roadmap. I would say still around 40% customers are only using our product in DevOps and all, in consistent SDLC and all. But that is something that is part of our product roadmap for next 6 months, where we have to make sure that 70 to 80% move to a regular usage, and we are deep inside their development life cycle.
Right.
So I would say it's a very long journey. It is never-ending journey, and you have to make sure that you have that stickiness factor where they come and use you. We see a lot of customers that are not on DevOps. We manage them by having a customer success manager and all, and that is something we introduced a year back, 1.5 years back. But before that, we used to leave them aside, and at the end of the year, we used to get a shock that okay, they are not renewing. So that was even bad. And these are customers who had subscribed for a year, and they were like bigger contracts, $10,000-$12,000, upwards of that. So then we assigned a CSM that could manage around 50 odd enterprises or SMEs with those particular contract cycles and all.
Got it. So at what point did you shift your customer segment from SMBs to mid-market and enterprises?
Yeah. So that was again around 2016 only, when the whole 16-17, when the whole startup bubble was bursting, a lot of these tiny owls and all were getting shut down. Right. And a lot of our revenue used to come from that, and that was a really danger zone for us. So we went through a very tough time personally from startup perspective, because I think 2014-15 we did roughly around $200,000 as annual revenue, and 2015-16 we did as $240,000. So there was just an increase of 40,000. While if number of customers we added in 2015 were more than we added in 2014, so there was something that was not working over there, and we realized it was majorly because our target segment was startups and these new age companies, where 50 to 60% of them don't survive, and that way we try to close them and put an effort for 2 to 3 months, and within a year if they shut down, then it is a no benefit for us to put in so much of effort cycle and all. And out of $240,000 next year, almost around 50 to 60 had come from one enterprise that came accidentally to us, and we realized that okay, this is where if we do a deep dive and understand what is working, what is not working, then SMB and the new age companies is definitely not working for us. New age companies, SMBs were still working, but enterprises is very lucrative and can give us even bigger revenue also. So that's when we shifted our focus, and that was not an easy shift. It took us almost a year, where we interviewed almost every bank in India, understood what they are going through, what is their problem, and without logos it's very difficult to convince that okay, we want to work. So we got a breakthrough in I think 2017 when the whole UPI thing came in picture. So we somehow got connected with NPCI, and that was our first banking engagement, where NPCI used us, and they were very happy. So they referred us to Axis Bank, That was our first banking customer. And from there, now we are working with DCB, Access, Yes, Kotak Securities, and about to close few other bigger logos like ICICI and on. But yeah, so it took us a really long journey to close NPCI and then Axis Bank. It was almost 1.5 year journey. But in that 1.5 year, we interviewed almost 70 to 80 enterprises to understand which vertical to go ahead with. Fintech, BFSI was one of the vertical. We also interviewed a lot of media agencies. We spoke with almost every big media house in India. Again, focus was India for us around 2016-17, but shift was happening from these SMBs and smaller new age companies to enterprises.
Fantastic. So your primary buyer is Chief Information Security Officer, or the CIO, where they don't have a specific CISO, buyer center. So when you said you interviewed a bunch of all these folks over a period of a year, what was your outreach strategy to reach out to them? What channels did you use? Because there are two things here. One is in trying to build this initial outreach relationship, and then once you have your product ready, is also go back to them and to explore a future opportunity of sale as well. So typically this is a big challenge, right? That what channel works both for an outreach or even for a sale. So what was the channel that worked for you?
Yeah, so I would say we use multiple channels, but one that specifically worked for CXOs in India. So one was I used to send them LinkedIn messages on regular basis to connect, and I was connected with them on LinkedIn eventually. So post that, we used to attend every security event, and wherever these banking CISOs and all used to come, we used to make sure that we have some presence, either a booth or something over there, and that made us visible to them. Then the third thing we used to do was used to reach out to CISO -1 and -2 on regular basis for free POC and all of those things. And whenever we used to get an entry, we used to, again, as mentioned, I was already connected with these CISOs. So I used to reach out to them through LinkedIn that we are already interacting with your team. Can I have a quick word? And that's when we used to get some time from CISO, again on telephone, not physical meeting. And most of them just used to say that, okay, my team is evaluating, so let me check with them. And post that, I think within 3 months, we used to get a response of physical meeting, and that's when we used to travel to Bombay and meet all of these bank CISOs. And that landed up deals like Axis Bank and Kotak Securities and all for us.
Interesting. So I assume it is during this time that the 2016, once you moved into the SaaS space, that's the time you put in your sales process in place so that you could have a structured process to segment, target, track, and close deals with them. So from a person coming, when you are starting off your company, you mentioned that you had no clue about sales, and now you're pivoted to SaaS and you're seeing successes with the enterprises. What was the mindset shift that happened? In terms of the sales skills and that very need that I need to be out there, trying to sell a technical product which is not very fancy but very critical from a security and from a regulatory point of view.
Yeah. So initially, as I mentioned, we always had a mindset that customers will come to us, like I'm talking about 14, 15, 16, that they will come to us and talk to us. So we never used to do a lot of outreach and all. And during 2017, when we realized that we have to reach out to enterprises, and enterprise CXOs are already loaded with too many things in their plate, so they'll definitely not go out and search like what exactly is happening. So we have to be over there. And that was a bit of difficult journey because we had moved to enterprises almost 6 months back where we were trying to reach out, but no one used to respond back to us. And that was very difficult journey because we had targets that, okay, we'll reach out to 20 enterprise CISOs by end of this month. And I emailed to almost 200 of them where I'm constantly following up with them, but there was no response from either of them that they want to meet. And that's when I realized that, okay, it's not a month like in a month you can reach out to 50 CISOs and crack the deal. It's a long process where you have to make sure that there is some kind of marketing going on, some kind of event, and some kind of constant emails and all calling activity happening. Also, not only CISO, but CISO -1, -2 has to be accounted for when you're closing deals. And I think it took us more than 2 years. By, I think, if I say about sales process, by this year, March, April, I started getting some satisfaction that okay, we are about to reach there with respect to process. But again, we did a lot of mistakes on the way as well. We hired a lot of sales guys without me having proper idea, and those were also freshers. So it was very, very difficult for us and freshers to work together, because I'm learning and they are also learning, and no one comes up with experience. So I think this was first year where we had hired someone who is experienced in business development, who came on board and started giving us a direction on how exactly to scale things up and all. So this was a hard call, and we did it when we were on bootstrap mode. While in 2014-15, when we had raised funding, we did not take that call. But I think that was the mindset shift that I'm talking about, because back then we used to think that customers will come to us. It's very easy thing to do. While in last 2 years, we realized that it's something that has to set up as a process, and you will not grow until you have everything aligned towards that, starting from like marketing to reach out to calling, plus the entire website and everything. So I think now we are reaching there, I would say. But it's a very long process, difficult, and the complete mindset has changed for us in last 3 years, where any event also we used to go, I never used to go out and speak with CISOs and all. I used to initially think that they'll come and on a booth, but now I generally have a speaking session next to them so that I get to meet them and have an interaction with them or something around that side.
Fantastic. So talk to us something about some of the sales stack or the tools that you guys have used over this journey.
Yeah.
Right? I remember very early that you guys were an early user of HubSpot. That's what I remember in one of our last past conversations.
Yeah.
So talk to us about some of the tools that have worked for you. What's your current both a sales and marketing set of tools that works for you?
So we've experimented with a lot, but starting 1-2 years, it was Excel sheet. So we used to track everything in Excel. So Excel was our CRM. Then we moved to Lead Squared, I think. Post that, we were not completely satisfied. We were having some technical issues. I think that was early days for them as well. Now they are pretty good, and they're local Indian-based companies. So,
right.
Post that we use Zoho for certain time period. But eventually we moved to HubSpot. They had come up with 1 year or 2 year for free and very cheap pricing back then. We used to get 90% discount. So we jumped on HubSpot because our marketing automation we are planning to put on HubSpot. And with respect to marketing, we were earlier using for blogs and all, we were using WordPress, and website and all was in-house built, and that was, I think, one of the bad decisions from our side, which I'll come on later in this discussion itself. Over time, we moved to HubSpot with respect to marketing automation, but our website still was in-house, where developers used to build that. And there was a lot of delay that used to happen because of that, because any small marketing change, we had to raise a technical request ticket that used to go to technical team. They used to create, and in their release cycle of 15 days, they used to release. So every marketing campaign has to make sure that there is 1 month of technical release cycle for making even a small change in our marketing content on website. So that's when we wanted to move to something that is automated CMS platform, and we moved to HubSpot CMS platform. That was almost 1.5 years back. We did that. And with respect to sales, we use HubSpot. We use automation of HubSpot intensively in it, where most of the inbounds, if they sign up, we get a ping on Slack that our entire team is at, and any deal closes used to come in Slack. Any interaction or any deal where there is no interaction happening, a ping comes on Slack to sales rep that okay, you have to reach out to this deal you have not done in last 5 days or 7 days. So that way we are able to track all of those things. In last 6 months, we have also started with predictability. So that was something that our head of business development introduced, that we should have more visibility on what is going to close over the quarter. So we know that okay, this much is predicted to close in this quarter, and that's where I think the whole setting up your next quarter goal comes into picture. So we were always reactive before this, where number used to hit and then we used to think, okay, did not go ahead with that number, what can we do? And then it used to go on side because we don't know what next quarter we will be hitting as well. But now when we are discussing, we are talking about next to next quarter, and we already know what we'll be hitting in next quarter. So we have some visibility on that side, and I think that's where most of the clarity brings a lot of right decision making that will impact on longer run with respect to whatever experiments you're doing. So everything comes from HubSpot. We use reporting in HubSpot extensively, where every team has reports in HubSpot, starting from marketing team, sales team, our customer success team. So they create different reports, and as part of my work, I just go on those reports and keep a track on that. And wherever I see that okay, there can be more things done, I just work with those teams and make sure that things are sorted with respect to that.
So you looked HubSpot as a platform primarily from a CMS and a marketing automation requirement, which then span out to cover end-to-end lifecycle.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is also critical when you're dealing with enterprises, where you can leverage, where it's important to use account-based sales strategy, because you're talking about enterprises.
Yeah.
And there's no one single decision maker, right? So as you said, there's a buyer and buyer minus one, minus two, that you got to arrive at a consensus to do this. Excellent. Talk to us a little bit about your, you mentioned that it was only very recently that you were able to hire in somebody to head your business development. So talk to us some of your hiring experiences that you have had, you have learned, and now how did you end up, hiring your business development head?
So I think it is a very different journey, because until your team is small, and you are part of every decision that happens, so you're interacting with your team directly. So you think that okay, you are very closely knit with your team, but you never realize that is one of the reasons you are not even growing, because you are involved in every decision making and all. And that is something that was I would say, I had a fear of losing that hold over everything that's happening. But eventually I realized that is important, because otherwise I don't have that kind of neither the knowledge nor the ability to understand what has to be done in right, and I don't have experience as well with respect to that. So I was majorly the roadblocker for the growth that we did not do in last 2 years, probably I can say that.
Okay.
And in last 6 months, while we were going through that journey, it was a bit difficult as well, but I would say it's important, because till now our company was flat, there was no hierarchy, and suddenly you introduce a head of business development. So your sales team that used to work with you has to now report to someone, and that is something that they have not done in last 2-3 years while working with you. So there is a lot of hiccup, there is a lot of challenge that okay, how can I report? Earlier we used to have a weekly call, and that also was very lightly, where we used to discuss and just leave it like that. And now he's talking about numbers on every call. So they used to get pressurized that okay, what is happening now at company? I used to love it earlier, and now I think there's a lot of pressure, and we went through that journey. We are still going through that, but on the verge. I think we have almost crossed that. And this is something that's not only from our experience, but a lot of companies that did take that step went through that journey. And I think that was majorly because neither me nor Shubho had a lot of corporate experience before starting Appnox. So we never knew how these bigger organizations are able to hit $1 billion of revenue. But they are able to hit because they have that complete hierarchy where not everything can be taken care by a CEO or a single person. And you need really good people driving things and objective that you have at bigger level. So yeah, I think that is something that we are going through, and in the whole journey we lost some of members who are working with us for since last 3.5 years. But I think that was essential. For next step, we have to make sure that has to be done. So yeah.
Excellent. So how did you land up in in finalizing your current business development? So what was the process that you followed? What parameters were you looking at?
That was another tough thing for us, majorly because we had never hired someone that senior. And so my simple strategy was, I was just asking him with respect to challenges that we were having, and if I used to get a response where I had a gut feeling that okay, this could fix whatever we are going through. That was one of the thing. And second, I think we have few advisors, so I also consulted advisors, and they also spoke to him, and that gave extra validation that okay, this would work out. And the third is, while running startup, you are into experimentation. So I picked it up as an experiment. I thought that okay, I'll pick it up for 3 months. I'll see how effective it is for me and for him. And if it works out, if we are mutually comfortable, then longer run, we'll definitely be able to fix it and drive things together. So I think that was the major thought process by which we went ahead. And I made sure that it's clarified that okay, it's a 3-month experimentation. And if it does not work, then it did not work for both of us. So that there is no surprise for him and for us as well. So that was the baseline we picked it up with, but with full dedication that we have to make it work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Now that intent to make it a success is important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can derail both the individual and the company cost of that experience. Excellent. Moving towards the next key thing, if you were to reflect back, right, you had a stagnancy, in your organization at some point, and then talk to us through that phase.
Yeah.
What were the kind of challenges and
Yeah. So we did a lot of mistakes. I think mistake is something that Appnox is built on. I would be very frank on that. So the first mistake we did was we raised a lot of money. So we raised roughly around $750,000, and that was when we didn't had any plan on how to use that. So we didn't had a plan of even $0 on how exactly we are going to spend it.
Was it easy to raise that amount of money back then?
It was. I think everybody was getting funded, and we got funding on idea, and during that Ola hype, we were able to close few customers. So that was the month we were also raising fund. It was probably a bit on a lucky side for us, that particular. I think it was March, April of 2015 when we were going through that thing.
Peak of the funding cycle.
So we were out for raising $350,000, and VC told that okay, I would invest $750K and at a higher valuation. So we said, why not have more funds if it's coming at almost equal equity. So we just went ahead and raised that fund. And I always define next 2 years as our honeymoon period, where the entire team was too relieved. We were not focused. Founders were relieved because we had funds in a bank. So we did not focus on growth. That was really bad. And I really would raise lesser amount, or probably not raise back then and raise when we really had a requirement. Like today, if I have got access to $750,000, I would invest it very, very wisely. And I know where to invest and grow our business. Back then I had no idea, and we were first-time founders. So I think we burnt that cash in 2 years. By end of 2017, we were out of funds. We were through very tough time where we were discussing whether we should shut down company or continue. And we were 25-member team doing $240,000 worth of revenue. So overall, it was not a really good position to be at, and that's when we even resized our team. So if I would have been back then, I would have hired more cautiously and hired right people. As I mentioned, we always used to hire freshers of 1 to 2 years experience, and we used to feel proud that okay, we are a young team of youngsters. But on thinking back, I think experience is required when you are building a company that is going to sustain for longer time period. And I would have not done this mistake back then. I would have probably looked at more experienced people, because we had cash in hand and we could spend and grow while we choose to be doing it otherwise. So these were two. Third one would be, I think while building Appnox, one of the other thing that we did was, so we were three co-founders where all three came from very strong startup mentality. We all three wanted to run startup. So eventually, by end of 2017, we realized that we are running three different companies in Appnox. So one is the sales company, the other is technical, and the third one is marketing. So I think I would have more process approach where things are going with a constant vision and all. And I think that was all a repercussion of raising a lot of money and then founders doing whatever they want to do, having their individual team, and they had individual plans to grow Appnox into something. And there was not a single true leader driving things. So I think that is something that I would have never done if I like now I'm at that position. We would have proper CEO who would drive everything. So this is something we changed around 2018, post that complete near-death experience of the company. And I think that was the turning point as well for us. And we realized that, okay, from here we are able to get growth, decent growth, not again hockey-like growth, but again a decent growth as most of the bootstrap companies get to see, or slightly better than that.
Fantastic. How much did talk to us a little bit about your partnership strategies, right? So I remember when we reached out to you to help build one of our customers' micro lending product, or India's first micro lending product back then. You had built some partnerships of resellers, and you were catering to some customers outside of India. So talk to us a little bit about how did you structure your partnerships, especially to sell your solutions to outside of India customers?
Yeah. So I think one of our first customer outside India was through you only, Biblesh. So so I remember we had got through MyTala through you. That was around 2018-ish. So that's when we realized that, okay, outside India we have to sell. And to our surprise, contract size was decent for us, like on higher side, it was not on lesser side. And we were very happy that, okay, this can be cracked and grow further. And that's when we started reaching out to more people whom we had interacted earlier outside India, where we did not get an opportunity to work with them. And surprisingly, I think last year we did roughly 30% of our revenue from partnership. And that was a good jump, because 2018 we hardly did $2,000 to $3,000 as overall revenue from partners, while last year we did roughly around $250,000 or $280,000 overall from channel partners. And our idea was simple: reach out to companies who don't have technical expertise, and some of our competitors were MSSPs in India. So we thought we'll reach out to MSSPs itself and interact with them and tell them that you offer services, use our product, bundle it and sell it together. And that worked out very good in Middle East market and in few other markets. Currently, we are also doing decently good in in Africa, in Nigeria and Middle East. I think the complete GCC region, we are having good sales from all of channel partners.
So what was your criteria in selecting these channel partners? How did you find them? How did you shortlist them?
So as mentioned, these were all channel partners whom we had interacted earlier, but nothing really worked out with them. So our simple strategy was going through a database of people who had signed up and who were outside India. We used to just go back and interact with them. Okay. So when we reached out to these companies, and they used to say that, okay, we are looking for mobile app security. We are ourselves a security services company, but we don't have expertise of mobile security. And we used to say, okay, then need not build it. We'll give you a complete white label platform that you can go ahead and sell that, okay, this is XYZ, like if XYZ is the company, we are partnering company, this is XYZ's platform that you can use. And that worked out in their favor, because they used to get that product advantage against their competitors in the region, and was easier for them to sell. And in fact, now I get to hear from some of our partners that we are one of the easiest to sell tool to their customers. So they get an entry into that customer, and then they try to grow into other services that they offer. Fantastic. So they use us as a entry technique, and then try to scale up their offering.
Yeah, that's a great partner tool to have.
Yeah.
Right. Fantastic. So talk to us, a little bit about your business impact during these times. So I assume security does not sleep,
Yeah.
right? And now with the work from home, there's a completely new requirement of enterprise mobility and stuff like that. So how has business been? What's the impact on sales, especially in 2020?
Yeah. So business has been decent, though a lot of enterprises that we are interacting with have not signed up contracts because they are also not very mature. The other challenge for us was our segment was banking segment that we were majorly targeting towards. And right before COVID, Yes Bank and a lot of those incidents happened that led to a really big shockwave in the whole BFSI fraternity. So a lot of those contracts went on complete pause. Like they're saying, we are just left for signing the PO. But parallelly, we were proactive enough to change our vertical in March itself, like mid of March, where we started retargeted our marketing towards SMBs and just focus on SMBs outside India. And we were able to make sure that we are doing decent revenue, at least something that is keeping us afloat until we are back to normal our enterprise business. I think now is the time when enterprises are closing those deals again. So things will be fine going forward. But in last 3 months, we were at, I would say, net zero or slightly more revenue than what we spent, but not on negative side, because again, as you mentioned, security is a requirement. And with respect to application security, though that was not on super demand because of a lot of people looking for VPN and a lot of those last mile security systems and all. So, but over time, I think it will increase. That is what is projected to happen next year. But as for now, it was decent for us. It was not bad, not good. I would say it's average for us.
Fantastic. Excellent, Harshit. Thank you so much. And I think we'll now open up for questions from the audience.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Tapin.
Hey, hi Harshit. Hi Vimlesh. Thanks for the session. Yeah. So I run again in a data protection space, a startup, solving data protection, backup recovery. So similar space, maybe little complementary security side. You may be a front runner. We are a goalkeeper of the security space. So I just wanted to one thought of you said when you were moving to the enterprise, you are able to talk to, you have interviewed 70-80 enterprise customer, banks and all those guys. So what was your process? How did you find it, or how do you reach out? What kind of a question or discovery? Can you little bit talk about that, because we are in the same journey right now, moving from SMB to enterprise.
Sure, Tapesh. So one of the things that we did back then was the first thing we did was we created a list of questions that we would be asking them, and what kind of responses we would get, accordingly those will change. So I created a complete questionnaire that we would be going through as a journey, which I wanted to have an answers for. And suppose that we did some dry runs internally. So Shubho used to come as a CISO of any random bank, and I used to go out as AppNox sales guy, and we used to interact on that side and see on how that complete conversation used to go out. We made sure that we never do a sales pitch over there. So it was just a consultative calling methodology that we used over there. So you can search for consultative sales consultative approach, where you're just consulting them, you're just asking them questions and making a note, because this was something that will help us prepare our pitch once we are back on our board and understanding what are the challenges that they're going through and all. Then the second thing on which CISOs and all to reach out to, for that we started again a reach out on LinkedIn and email with the approach of just saying that, okay, we want to get on a call with you, not to sell, but just to understand what are the problems you're having towards mobile security. So pitch was as simple as this, and we used to send it across to them, and we used to get decent response on LinkedIn that, okay, let's speak this time, let's speak that time, and that's where we started having that first level of conversation with these CISOs.
Okay, so it was a more learning about their current process of doing the things. What your problem you're solving?
What are the problem areas? That was our major agenda.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question there.
Yeah.
Harshit. What was the motivation for them to come onto your call? Why did they have to come onto your call?
So I think that they really had a problem on mobile security. That is something that I realize now when I see back, because most of the vendors that they use or most of the platforms that they use is not very focused towards mobile, and they were seeing a good growth on mobile. Till date, I think banks are seeing a major increase in mobile usage compared to their web, and shift from web to mobile. So this was something that they had to solve, and it was taking priority, I would say. It was also about timing, because the same thing we tried in 2015, 16 and all, and we never used to get a lot of responses. So I think things were changing, and this was when the whole UPI payment and everything was coming into picture. So the whole mentality with respect to mobile usage and all was changing, and they realized that there is a problem and we need to solve on that side.
So one more question around similar, like, so did you check about like what would they pay, what is the pricing, and
No, not really.
not
We did not touch that point also.
And like so then when you actually the data you gathered in during that interview process, and when you started pitching and selling, did you find the difference of the biasness in the data?
Biasness as in?
Like when you talk just to get some consultancy, people are more open. Yeah, this is good if you do that, right? But when you are going and asking for money, then people say no, they will talk next year. And
so there will be definitely some resistance over there, but the good point is that you have already set up some touch point with those CISOs, and when you ask these CXOs that okay, I need help on this side, they are already on board in your journey, because they are giving you some pointers on their problem area. So you know what is their problem area, and when you go back to them, you say that okay, I will help you solve this problem area that you mentioned. Then they are already connected with you, and they're probably part of your journey somewhere or the other, even smaller percentage. And I think you have got more pointer to connect rather than just going ahead and selling to them.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Harshit.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tapesh. Next question is we have from Smita Mishra. What are the key queries you foresee in the space of security for 2021?
Okay. So I generally use Gartner Hype Cycle and all for that, because as I mentioned, our offering is very, very niche towards application security. But in 2020-21, I think major increase is going to be happening on cloud security and the whole API and all of that is going on, because in a lot of enterprises, digitization has happened because of the whole COVID thing. And when they move to digitization, the next thing they have to make sure is on whatever they have on cloud has to be secure. And that's where the requirements and all have to increase on that side. That's probably one of the top thing that we are seeing in few of our customers as well. But on longer run, I see that happening. But COVID-19 has just escalated that or accelerated that. Sorry.
Shit, any parting thoughts for for entrepreneurs like Tapesh? As you mentioned, is in the goalkeeper space. Complementary product to what you do, talking to a similar buyer center.
Yep.
And he's just raised a round of funding just prior to COVID right now. And to others, who are just starting up and looking at enterprise spaces, any parting thoughts?
So one of the things, I think, specifically if you are understanding for security and all, but I think you have to make sure that you are like fighting and growing, because we went through a lot of fights. I think in last 5 years, we had 2 moments where we were on the verge of concluding that, okay, we'll shut down the company, but still we continued. So that whole spirit has to be alive. And there is a lot of good that you don't see coming on your doorstep. But yeah, if you're there working towards it, I think you will get there.
Thank you so much, Harshit. Thanks for your time. Great conversation.
Thanks.
Good to see our past association being nurtured and continuing to go forward. So thank you for being on PitchCamp. Thanks, Harshit, once again.
Thanks a lot, Bimlesh. Thanks everybody. I'll be there in